Welcome to Fox Encounter. I am your host, Fox. Please consider taking a few seconds to subscribe, drop a like on the video, and share it with your friends. Stay tuned for more content and enjoy the episode.
And now, suspense.
Let's talk about the fact that, like, people like that ruin my enjoyment of stuff, because I know one of the things that irks me too about like the movie community is that like we try to give passes to people for just doing like really despicable shit, and it's like there's a fine line I can draw. Arnold Schwarzenegger. I remember Grace Randolph was like boycotting every Schwarzenegger movie because on his wife, and I'm like,
Grace Randolph.
What does that have to do? I mean, like, that's his personal life. No one is being like harmed in a way that is like violent or anything. It's just like, you know, it's infidelity. Now, when I see people still defending Kevin Spacey and his movies, I'm like, I can't do that. That's where I'm like, I can't rock with that. Like, I can't rock with it.
There were some hell of movies though, weren't they?
Yeah, like that's what like, I can't watch like a movie with someone like that, like especially with Kevin. I'm glad I don't own, honestly, like looking back, I don't own any movie with Kevin Spacey in it.
You know, I own Baby Driver.
I don't. It's just kind of funny. It's funny how that worked out, because if I did, I'd probably get rid of it. And people will say like, well, maybe what if he's not the focal point? I was like, it's Kevin Spacey, bro. Like, dude was A-list all the way. Like every movie he's in, he has a very like big part in it, you know? Obviously I can't watch Baby Driver because I'll look at him and just feel like, you dirty
I watched it. I actually watched it recently, and every scene he came on, I cringed. I was like, "Oh yeah, you." Still a really good movie though.
Dirty
bastard.
Yeah, and like Joss Whedon is one of those people. I recently found Serenity on 4K, and I bought it because I was like, "Oh, I remember watching this movie, and I enjoyed it, you know." And I watched it, and I was like, yeah, "This is pretty good. I really enjoyed it." And then I remember I was like, "Oh yeah, Joss Whedon did this." I was like, "Ugh."
I'm happy. Honestly, that's why I'm happy. I never liked Joss Whedon anyway. Besides a few, he did a few things. That like first Avengers was pretty decent.
Yeah,
first it was really good. It was good when it came out, and then Cabin in the Woods was pretty fun. But like, I never liked Buffy or Firefly or anything like that. So like, so when this happened, I was kind of like, oh well. like I was like, I already didn't like them. Now I got a better reason not to.
Funny enough, I remember watching this when I was rewatching the Office season series again. Joss Whedon actually directed like a couple episodes of The Office, and I remember his name came up, and I was like, "Oh, you disgust me!"
There he is.
No, I was like, "Don't you dare taint something I love."
I had this conversation with a lot of people. I think the reason why, like, I don't know if it's controversial, but like whenever I hear about celebrities doing like they get involved in like shady shit or whatever like that, like Jonah Hill recently being like abusive to his girlfriend. I'll be honest with you, I don't want to say I don't care. It's just the fact that like that's not my life, and I don't know these people. So like, unfortunately, and like then also I don't have that high expectations for like celebrities.
Yeah,
celebrities, politicians. Shit. I'm like, I don't have high expectations anyway. I'm like,
yeah, we don't idolize those kinds of people.
Yeah, exactly. So like there is some that like, I don't know, if something bad came out about Zack Snyder, I don't know what I'd do. Like he's one of the few, him, Scorsese, James Wan, you know, like if something bad came out of them, maybe I'd feel differently. But so far, like every big scandal about celebrities that came out,
it's usually somebody that you kind of don't care about anyway.
Yeah, or I'm kind of like this with like, I'm just like, I'm like, damn, that sucks. I mean, my reaction is usually, that sucks, and I move on.
Oh, no. Anyway, last week...
I think it also depends on what it is. Recently with, like, Danny Masterson. I remember I was, like, flipping through channels and that 70s show came on, and I was like, ugh, you dirty bitch. Like, I can't watch 70s show anymore because, one, I see Danny Masterson, and I'm like, this is a sick individual. And then I see Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis, like, defending a predator, and I'm like, oh man, like you guys really had to like ruin this show for me, didn't you?
That was a good ass show too.
Yeah, and now I just see it and I'm just like,
See, that's where I differ, I guess, because I don't know, I try not to keep up with celebrities. Like it helps now that I'm not on social media as much anymore, not on Twitter as much. So like this past year I've done a lot better like not knowing what the celebrities are even up to. So I guess that's why it's easier for me to see something than then I'm like, oh, this person did that. I'm like, oh, damn, that sucks. I don't know. I just can't anymore. It's like, I know when people were trying to cancel James Gunn because of like all the really up weird jokes he wrote back in like the early 2000s. And also his groups of friends from the early 2000s that were all like creeps. But at the same time, it's kind of like, well, for one, that wasn't James Gunn. And for two, like when it comes to his joke writing, like I'm pretty certain they're just jokes. You know?
Yeah, they're not good, but they're jokes.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't. Yeah, he's not that funny. I don't think he's that good. But like they're clearly just jokes. Like he wrote Lollipop Chainsaw, and it's about a high school girl, and there's a lot of provocative humor in it around this high school girl. Yeah, he wrote it, so it's like people think it's distasteful. I'm like, yeah, but
with his type of James Gunn's type of humor, he has a like very frat boy, type of humor that just doesn't work for me. I'm just like, some of it's kind of like gives a chuckle out of me.
When he was left, when he did the Guardians movies, obviously like the first one he co-wrote with somebody else, which is why I think it's like the writing's better because he co-wrote it with somebody. Second one, he was just the writer, which is why the jokes aren't as funny. But with the Suicide Squad, like that's when people say Zack Snyder is edgy, this is what I think they mean, because James Gunn is actually very edgy and actually try hard. Like when people say like it's like it's very frat boy, like people provocative, raunchy. People don't know what people use the word edgelord and edgy so much that they see something dark and gloomy like Batman v Superman, or even something that's mildly gloomy like Man of Steel. They're like, oh, it's so edgy now. I'm like, I guess. I'm like, James Gunn comes out with his raunchy, brutal comic book movie, and they don't see an issue with that. Yeah. Like the Batman, but Matt Reeves. I think that's a pretty dark and semi-edgy movie. Not the darkest I've ever seen, but like that's clearly a very dark movie, and no one cared that it was dark. So it's like, okay, whatever.
That's how we know. That's how we know. Especially me and you being like big fans of Snyder, is that like all that hate was just unwarranted, and then just came from a place of just like pure ignorance. Because like I said, me and you, we know what edgy humor is. We grew up on like South Park and like Family Guy and all this like, and because of our environments, we grew up around people that were like super edgelords. So we know what real edgy is.
Take it back to 2011, Tyler the Creator. We'll show what edgy is.
Yeah,
but that was funny. But like, it's such an overused thing now. Like when I let a friend of mine borrow Batman v Superman like a year or two ago, and she never saw it, and she only ever seen Marvel movies. So when she walked away from it after watching Batman v Superman, she didn't like it that much because she thought the story was all over the place. But she said that like she goes visually, it was like she says one of the best comic movies she's ever saw because she only ever saw Marvel movies at that point. I said, well, I'm like, what do you think it was like dark or edgy? She goes, it was dark, but like what was edgy about it? I'm like, oh, was it gloomy? She goes, yeah, but like what's edgy about it? Like, okay, so I'm not crazy. So if it feels like a weird label tack on the Snyder just because a lot of his movies are typically darker or more violent or whatever. But I think this word, I just think edgy and edgelord has just lost its meaning. And when they see something actually edgy or raunchy, then they'll know the difference,
Would you say that it's accurate in me saying that when it comes to that movie, because me and you are like really big fans of it, that's one of those movies that if someone doesn't like it, I usually mute out anything they have to say. Because I'm usually pretty like we talk about a lot about like having own opinions and film being subjective and all that stuff. And there's a ton of movies that I love that if someone was like, oh, I didn't like that movie, it kind of sucked, I'm like, okay. But if somebody says Batman vs Superman is like the only movie that if somebody says, oh, I didn't like Batman vs Superman, I was like, all right, shut up, I'm not even going to listen to whatever you're going to say.
I think it depends on what it is. It depends on like the reason why. Like when my friend said she thought the plot was all over the place, I'm like, yeah, a lot of stuff happens in the movie. I give them that. But like if that's all their complaint is, like, yeah, the story's kind of all over the place, which is why I didn't like it, or they felt it was too long, I can understand that. But if their whole argument are like other like these YouTube and Twitter talking points where it's like they butchered the characters and this doesn't make any sense, then I need to know why.
Yeah,
it's like well, what's the why? Why is this wrong? Why is that wrong?
That's why I cut them off immediately, because 99% of the time I already know it's going to be something that they're spewing from whatever critic they heard say about it, or whatever their friend said, or whatever some like guy on YouTube said about it. Yeah, I've heard every single argument about why that movie's bad, and none of them are good points.
Yeah, none of them stick.
I've never heard anybody give me a good point about it. That's why I'm immediately like, because I'll see like, it's really hard for me to watch different content creators, which is why I'm mad that you don't make videos anymore. Because whenever I try to like look for different content and I stumble upon like I eventually just stumble upon like comic book stuff or comic book movie related shit, because that's like my bread and butter, so what I used to focus on a lot, as soon as they get to Batman vs Superman and they talk about like, oh, this movie's garbage. I'm like, I can't watch you. Like, I'm not even gonna watch any of your other content, because if your take on that movie is something that has been spewed from like everyone just because they wanted to hate on it because it was cool at the time, it's like I'm not gonna waste a minute of my time on your other content. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there are a few creators that like I do disagree with, but like I do sometimes watch. Everywhere else, we're kind of like on the same. We're like, I understand where they're coming from. So there's a few where I'm kind of like, okay, we don't agree, but I see why you feel that way. But Batman v Superman is one of the few movies I'm kind of like, nah, you're wrong.
Nah, you're wrong.
I think it's because like being in the trenches in 2016 when that came out, I'm so jaded to it now. Nowadays, like people say they don't like it, I'm just like, okay, whatever. So we're still talking about it like what 7 years later.
I'm gonna show you how we do it up here in Pinky's, nigga.
Oh yeah, no, because me and you, like we were like in the forefront of those. So I've heard like everything. I've heard every single argument. So now I'm just like,
it's always the same talking points.
Yeah, that's why when I first start to hear that, when they first start to like do those talking points, and I'm like, oh, I've heard this before.
They should have had Jesse Eisenberg play like the Riddler or something. He's not a good Jesse Eisenberg.
Or just like what was the other the infamous Martha scene? I'm like, really? Oh, yeah. Like that's all you got? What else you got? What else you got? That's it? All right.
It's like a core. It's like, and I hate when people say like if they're like avid comic book fans, like comic book like movie enjoyers, and they complain about like the plot convenient stuff, like the Martha scene. It's like, oh, it's awfully convenient. Their mothers share the same name. And it's like, it's awfully convenient for everything that happens in the fucking MCU, I guess. With a lot of these, it's like it's awfully convenient that in the Dark Knight, everything the Joker plans just happens to happen the way he planned it. It's a good thing, It's like it's one of those things where it's like you got to suspend a little bit or something, because if you think like Civil War is such a great movie, but you hate BVS, so much happens in Civil War that's like so plot convenient. Everything Zemo does for his plan is so conveniently, perfectly planned that like when they say they like Civil War but they hate Jesse Eisenberg because his character's too smart, I'm like, don't you hate Zemo too? Isn't he way too smart?
People are like so consumed with the whole like brand loyalty thing, is that like they're just willing to look past everything just because it is what it is. And it's like, come on now, like if we're gonna do that for something, you got to do it for everything, not just one thing.
Yeah.
I remember somebody recently was saying that they hated the new Mission Impossible because of the main villain and the direction they took it. Because the main villain, if you've never seen Mission Impossible, the main villain isn't who you think it is. It's more of an entity. I remember somebody saying like, oh, I hated the Mission Impossible because the main villain is like, it's stupid and it doesn't make sense. And I was like, I mean, and I guess they thought that the main villain is too impractical and it was like goofy. But I was like, you obviously have never seen Mission Impossible, because the entire series is based on goofy shit. Like James Bond is goofy as shit when you think about it.
Bond is pretty goofy.
8 movies in, and they're still doing the whole like face mask thing, and people are falling for it. But yet the main villain being more of an entity and being in control of everything, because our world is so electronic, and AI is a big thing now, and the entity being able to control every aspect of what's going on and manipulate things just by the sheer use of technology, to them was stupid. And I was like, bro, that's literally what is going on in the world right now.
I gotta watch the Mission Impossible movies. I think that when they rebooted them, I saw the first one. Well, it was not even a reboot. It was like 4, right? It was like a sequel. Like
because they went to 3,
and
then Ghost Protocol came out like a couple years after.